Good morning. It is 9:03. We're going to start this Planning Commission meeting. We have a quorum present. Mr. Sam Smith is going to lead us in the prayer, and Connolly is going to lead us in the pledge. Mr. Smith, if you could please come up.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the consent agenda. The commission may request for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for presentation and public comment. Otherwise, the consent agenda will be considered in one vote.
And just for the board's knowledge, the minutes were not ready, so we were not able to send them out in advance. We would like to push this to the next agenda if the board finds that acceptable.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to table the approval of the October 21st minutes on the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? 6-0. All right, the next item, CU 19-15, Curley. Public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of conditional use to allow for a religious institution in a two-family zoning district being 0.5 acres located at 1502 North Magdalen Street and 1501 Pecan Street.
And just for the public's information, we are going a little bit out of order. Mr. Curley, the applicant, has asked to withdraw this, so we were moving it up just to allow him to do so. He would like to come forward at this point.
Okay. Good morning, sir.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Robert Curley. I would like to withdraw our conditional use application.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we have a request from the applicant to table. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I'm sorry, to withdraw.
I'm sorry, to withdraw. We have a motion to withdraw. Second. Okay, so all in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Curley. All right, subdivision plats. The Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. Lake Park final plat, a request for approval of the final plat of Lake Park being 32.317 acres located east of North Bryant Boulevard between West 48th Street and Lake Drive until December 16th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
Good morning, Planning Commissioners. My name is Hillary Bucher. I'm the Planning Manager. We're going to start with the final plat of Lake Park and the extension request. So this plat is actually, they are requesting an extension today. We'll go over some of the basics and then let the applicant come forward to talk about the extension. Due to the new state law, the extension cannot be granted by staff. It has to be brought forward to the commission. It would allow them 30 days to complete this request. This is a proposed final plat. It is 32 acres. It's north of Lake Drive and east of Bryant. So Lake Drive would be a little bit south of here. The zoning is CG and R&E, with the R&E being to the rear. The future land use is commercial and rural. I'm sorry, that is incorrect. I don't believe it's in Billy DeWitt's district or the Bluffs neighborhood, but it is up in the northern part of town, probably Tom Thompson in the Lakeview area, so kind of give you an idea of where we're looking.
I'll be representing the owner in this plat. We would just like to formally request an extension to next month's meeting so that we can move one of the streets so that it's in compliance with the city ordinance of the 750-foot maximum rule. So I have the letter here
Okay? Does anyone have questions for Mr. Terry? Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so we have a request from the applicant to grant an extension to next month's Planning Commission meeting.
They're doing it to comply with city regulation.
Yes, sir. When they submitted their plat, their road that came into this area, so 42nd comes up and kind of cul-de-sacs. Their road was approximately here, which left this segment longer than 750 feet, which is a violation of the zoning ordinance and as well the fire code for the cul-de-sac link. So what they're proposing is to move it up just a little bit to comply. So the plat itself will stay relatively the same. We will just shift the road a little bit north to comply with the distance requirements.
Okay? Thank you. Anyone wish to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the extension for 30 days.
Okay? We have a motion and a second to approve the extension of the request, 30 days to the December 16th Planning Commission meeting. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? 6-0. Manning Addition, Section 1, a request for approval of a final plat in Block 1, Manning Addition, Section 1, located at 2801 Bowie Street. A variance from Chapter 103A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum right-of-way width of 52 feet in lieu of the required 60 feet for Bowie Street and Urban Minor Collector Street, and 2 variances from 103A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum paving width of 40 feet in lieu of the required 50 feet for Bowie Street and Urban Minor Collector Street, and a minimum paving width of 36 feet in lieu of the required 40 feet for Oaklawn Boulevard and Urban Collector Street.
Good morning, Shelley Pasco, planner. As you stated, this is a final plat in Block 1, Manning Addition, Section 1. It is approximately 1.46 acres, located at 2801 Bowie Street. The current zoning is RS1, and the future land use is Neighborhood Center. It's within Lucy Gonzalez's District Number 4, and it is in the Reagan neighborhood. They are requesting a total of 3 variances. One variance is the paving width of 38 feet for the required 50. Another one, and that was for Bowie, also for Oaklawn, it's currently 36 and it needs to be 40. And maintain a 52-foot right-of-way for Bowie, which is required 60. Here's a couple of photos of both Bowie and Oaklawn. As you can see, they are already curb and guttered. Rationale, this area is low-density residential as a primary use, but there is some commercial uses also. The neighborhood center does allow for a mixed use of commercial and residential. The conformity with intent of the purpose statements, the plat does or will provide orderly, safe, and efficient development for the city. And streets will secure, safe, convenient, functional system for circulation. The rationale for the variances, both Bowie and Oaklawn already have curb and gutter in this area. Most of the properties within this area are currently fully developed. The existing roadway does function as is existing, and it does serve the neighborhood as it is. City staff, we do recommend approval of the final plat in Block 1, Manning Addition, Section 1, subject to 6 conditions of approval. We also recommend approval of both 2 variances from Chapter 10-3A2 to maintain the paving width on both Bowie and Oaklawn, and approval of the variance to maintain 52 feet of right-of-way on Bowie. The 6 conditions are a tax cert, improve Bowie or seek a variance, which they are doing, improve Oaklawn or seek a variance, which they are doing, dedicate 4 foot of right-of-way for Bowie or seek a variance, which they are doing. One correction, we need to correct Oaklawn Street to Oaklawn Boulevard, and they need to install water and wastewater service lines. There is a note to submit a drainage study. if it's required.
Okay?
Any questions?
Yes, the existing road paving widths are consistent on both blocks, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
And the right-of-way is consistent with
Yes,
the
sir.
other lots adjacent? Okay.
And planning staff and engineering, we both recommend approval on those variances.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the staff? All right,
Can you go to the recommendation page?
we're going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell with SKG Engineering. We would just seek your approval of the variances as presented and as recommended by the staff, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gully.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Gully? All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? If you would, please come forward and state your name and your address or your single-member district. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone have any thoughts or wish to make a motion up here?
Are there two motions?
You could do both of, or all of this with one motion. You're approving the plat and then your decision on the variances, but they can be all one motion. You can make a motion to approve as presented.
I make the motion to approve as presented, plat and variances.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as recommended by the city staff, including the variances. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, 6-0. Second replat in Block 8, ES Kirby subdivision. A request for approval of a second replat of Block 8 ES Kirby subdivision located at 2215 North Lily Street, and a variance from Chapter 103A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum paving width of 36 feet for Lily, an urban local street.
Good morning again, Shelley Pascal, planner. This is the second replat in Block 8, Kirby subdivision. It's approximately 0.246 acres. It's located at 2215 Lily Street. The zoning is single-family. The future land use neighborhood is within District 4 also, Lucy Gonzalez. It's within the Blackshear neighborhood. With this proposed replat, it is one residential lot, and they are requesting one variance to maintain the paving width at 35 in lieu of 40 for Lily Street. Here's a photograph of Lily Street. As you can see, it is also curbed and guttered. With this plat, I did have to notify. I sent out 14 notifications. I did receive 1 in favor and 0 in opposition. The rationale, it does conform with the RS1 zoning for the future land use and is a continuation of the existing development in this area. The plat will provide orderly, safe, and efficient development to the city, and the streets will secure safe pedestrian circulation and vehicular. The variance, we are recommending approval. This section of Lily is already curb and guttered. Most of the properties in this area also are fully developed. The existing roadway functions as it is, and Lily Street is adequate for the neighborhood it serves. Therefore, city staff, we are recommending approval of the second replat of Block 8, ES Kirby addition, subject to 4 conditions of approval and approval of the variance from Chapter 103A2. The 4 conditions for this plat are tax cert, improve Lily or seek a variance, which they are doing, correct the street name from North Lily Street to just Lily Street, and install water and wastewater service lines.
Okay.
Any questions?
Questions for Ms. Pascal? Thank you. We're going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell with SKG Engineering. Would ask your approval of
this plat as presented with the variance, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Gully? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this case? If you would, please come forward. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone up here wish to make a motion or have comments?
To approve as presented.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right, replat of Lot 4, Block 2, G. Turner's re-subdivision. Request for approval of a replat of Lot 4, Block 2, G. Turner's re-subdivision, located at 3402 and 3404 North Chadbourne Street, and a variance from Chapter 10-3A1 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum right of way width of 70 feet in lieu of the required 80 feet for North Chadbourne Street, an urban arterial street, and a variance from Chapter 10-3A2 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum paving width of 55 feet in lieu of the required 64 feet for North Chadbourne Street, an urban arterial street.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sherry Bailey, Principal Planner. You have before you a replat, as you indicated, of Lot 4, Block 2, G Tours re-subdivision. It's 0.573 acres. The address is 3402, 3404 North Chadbourne. The zoning there is general commercial, heavy commercial. The future land use is commercial. It's in District 2, Mr. Thompson's district, and it's in the Lakeview neighborhood. I've included both the plat and then the plat with the building because I think it's important to note that an existing building has the storage units on the north and then an auto repair immediately adjacent. They are dividing it between those two buildings. Those two buildings have a zero lot line, so they will be required to add a firewall to this structure, but the reason that they are dividing it at this point is to sell off the auto repair. This is in conformity with the comprehensive plan. The CGCH zoning is consistent with the commercial future land use. And then, as I indicated, there are 3 existing buildings on the site, and it's a continuation of that existing development. The plat will provide for the orderly, safe, and efficient development of the city, streets that ensure safe, convenient, and functional systems for vehicular and pedestrian circulation. They are requesting 2 variances. The first one is the right-of-way width. The second is for the pavement. This is North Chadbourne. North Chadbourne has functioned with the existing width, curb and gutter, and pavement ever since it was a state highway. It is basically built out, and because of that, staff is recommending approval. Garden Road, which is at the intersection of the 2 streets, does meet the city's requirements. I've included pictures so you can see where the property is going to be divided. It's between the storage unit and the automotive, just so you get a sense of what's existing out there. And also, this is a front picture of the remaining building on the site. As I indicated, staff is recommending approval of the request with 5 conditions of approval and approval of the 2 variance requests. The conditions of approval, tax certification to fire rate that exterior wall between the 2 buildings that will now have a 0 lot line. To dedicate the right-of-way for North Chadbourne or to seek a variance, which they are doing, to improve North Chadbourne or submit a financial guarantee and seek a variance, which they are doing, and to install water and wastewater service lines to each lot, and they are in the process of doing that. Are there any questions?
Yes, if you could go back to the picture of the existing structures.
That one?
Yes.
Okay.
Where's the firewall going?
The firewall will actually, if I understand correctly, will actually come in. It kind of jogs down, so it comes straight in the back, and then it comes in like that.
Okay. And both of these lots meet the minimum parking requirements?
Yes, they do.
Individually?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions for the staff?
If they ever change the uses of these, we may have to look at parking otherwise, but right now.
Existing current
The
use.
existing current uses are basically non-conforming and allowed to continue in that fashion.
Okay,
And they understand that.
thank you. Anyone else have questions for the staff? Thank you, Ms. Bailey. I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell with SKG Engineering. First, we'd like to thank staff. This one, because of the existing buildings, posed some challenges, and staff, I guess Aaron rallied staff together. They went out and took a look, got all this together, and came up with some great solutions that allow this to occur. So thanks to staff for their help on that. So we'd ask your approval of this replat with the variances requested, and happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Gully? Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? If you would, please come forward. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone up here wish to make a motion or have comments?
Move to accept as presented. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented by the city staff. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? 6-0. First replat in Lot 28, Block 2, Poulter's Highland Acres Addition. Request for approval of a first replat in Lot 28, Block 2, Poulter's Highland Acres Addition, located 275 feet west of the intersection of Townview Lane and Fisher Street, and a variance from Chapter 10-3A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum paving width of 36 feet in lieu of the required 40 feet for Townview Lane and Urban Local Street. Mr. Fisher.
Morning, Planning Commissioners. Jeff Fisher, Principal Planner. This is the first replat in Lot 28, Block 2, Poulter Heights Highlands Acres Addition on 1.416 acres. Its zoning is ranch and estate, and it's in Billy DeWitt's District Number 6 in the Bluffs neighborhood. So this was the original Poulter Highlands Acres Addition in 1947. Sometime, we don't know exactly when, it was before 2000. All of these lots were originally 3 acres. And then different owners at the time had created a split. And so some of the homes, most of them to the north, were already built. They left the southerly halves with 2 things: deficient size, so it was didn't have the lot frontages, and secondly, they weren't technically platted because they were remainders. So you can't do that. You have to get a subdivision plat when you can't just leave a remainder. So they did get an administrative adjustment last month for 147 feet of frontage, which is very close to 150, so that's fine. But they still need to do the plat, so that's what you see today. Total acreage is 1.416. They're also requesting a pavement variance from Townview Lane to remain 36 feet in lieu of 40 feet, and that entire street is 36 feet right now. So staff believes on the plat side it conforms with the comprehensive plan. The lot exceeds the minimum standards in the ranch and estate zoning district. Today you only have to have an acre, and they're 1.416 acres, so they're good. Got the administrative adjustment on the lot frontage, so they comply with all of the ranch and estate zoning standards. The existing street can accommodate the additional home, vehicle and pedestrian circulation, and the efficient layout of lots and blocks. This lot would comply with all of those policies. Also, the replat would legalize an existing remainder from the original tract. As you go north of Townview Lane, past Mercedes and west, all of that area is federal government land, so it's unlikely that that would redevelop and put any strain on Townview. Townview dead ends to the west. So we believe that really Townview serves at 36 feet as it is. So our rationale is to approve the variance based on that. Almost all of the lots to the south have homes already. The ones that don't would have to do the same thing, come in for a replat. The existing dead-end street serves a subject block as it is. A hardship, we believe, would be created, and engineering and planning agree. They'd have to cut that curb and add an extra 2 feet, which really wouldn't serve the neighborhood past what they already have. And as mentioned, they did receive the administrative adjustment on the lot frontage last month. 19 notifications were mailed, 2 in favor. I've passed those out to you, number 11 and number 7. And these are some of the pictures looking at the property. There is an existing fence that was put in that slightly go about 3 feet over the front lot line, so they'll have to move that back. And we have talked to the owner, and she's agreed to do that. That fence was definitely pre-existing before she bought the property, but now that she's platting, we'll have that as a condition of approval. So staff recommends approval of a first replat on Lot 28, Block 2 of Poulter Highland Acres Addition, and approval of a variance from Chapter 103A2 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to allow minimum paving of 36 feet, no sidewalk, in lieu of the required 40 feet or 36 feet with a 4-foot sidewalk. And subject to the 5 conditions of approval, copy of the tax certification, removal of the chain link fence in the public right-of-way. As mentioned, they can still keep the fence, they just have to move it back out of the right-of-way. Improve Townview Lane, submit a financial guarantee or seek a variance, so this would be for the variance. Submit plans and install a sewer main and connections, and install water and wastewater service lines to each lot. This concludes staff's presentation. Any questions or comments?
Anyone have questions for Mr. Fisher? Thank you, sir. We're going to open this up for public comment.
One last time today, Russell with SKG Engineering. We would ask your approval of this plat with the variance requested and would be happy to answer any questions.
No questions. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'm Jimmy Fontenot, 3947 Mercedes. So I understand it right, because we live actually on the north side of one of the tracks that still is not, doesn't have a home on it. So basically what I'm understanding is that each one of those pieces of property must be replatted before someone can actually put a home on it, correct?
That's a question.
Yes, that's correct.
For staff.
Yes, sir.
And so that's what we're talking about. So obviously someone wants to do that, so you have to put the sewer and all that in. And as far as the road width goes, you're just maintaining what's already there, correct?
That's right.
Okay, perfect.
That's the request that's been made. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? If you would, please come forward. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone up here have any thoughts or wish to make a motion?
I make the motion to approve the variance and plat as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as proposed by the city staff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. First replat in Block 11, Lakeview Addition. Request for approval of a first replat in Block 11, Lakeview Addition, being lots 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, comprising 1.033 acres of land generally located east of Bowie Street between East 48th Street and East 49th Street, and 7 variances from Chapter 103A2 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum paving width of 30 feet and no curb and gutter for Bowie Street, an urban local street, to exempt any paving, curb, or gutter, and maintain a paving width of 0 feet for East 48th Street and East 49th Street, urban local streets, to exempt any paving of the existing east-west alley and the proposed north-south alley, to allow the alleys to be 15 feet wide in lieu of the required 20 feet. Mr. Fisher.
Morning, Jeff Fisher again. This is a first replat in Block 11 Lakeview Addition. They had submitted a request last month, but they had tabled it, so it didn't get to the Planning Commission to make some readjustments. The main difference in the plat configurations was adding extending the alley from 15 feet to 20 feet, and also extending the variances on the paving of those alleys, as well as the width. So I'm going to walk you through, and as well as the public, quickly what they're proposing. Zoning is RS1. It's in the neighborhood designation in the future land use District 2, Tom Thompson, and it's on 1.033 acres. So this is the plat configuration that they submitted. So the 6 lots right now go like this, and they're basically reorienting them in an east-west direction to face Bowie Street. As part of that request for Bowie Street, they also have a 15-foot alley here. An alley needs to be 20 feet under the subdivision ordinance, so they're going to have 2.5-foot utility easements. That'll allow utilities to be extended across Bowie in the future. And also they have, since their submission, widened the alley here from 15 feet to 20 feet, so they won't, we will be recommending that variance is no longer required since they do have the width. But fundamentally what they're doing is 49th Street would normally have to be 40 feet wide or 36 feet with a 4-foot sidewalk. They're asking for 0 here, not pave it at all, not pave 48th Street at all, same situation. Keep Bowie Street at 30 feet instead of 40, so that would be an extra 5 feet that we would require in their incremental half. So basically 3 variances on all the streets. Keep this as a 15-foot alley and unpaved, and then keep this as the 20-foot alley's fine, but have that unpaved as well. So those are all of the variances that are requested, and of course approval of the plat. So we looked at the comprehensive plan. The RS1 zoning would comply with the neighborhood designation of future land use of neighborhood, which supports different housing choices in residential areas. It's a convenient location. It's within walking distance of a school. So we support the plat in principle, but we do not support the variances. So let's go over that. Conformity with the intent of purpose statements. If all of the road widths and alley widths were provided, then we would believe that it would conform with our intent of purpose statements. All of the street right-of-ways are 60 feet wide, so can easily accommodate any additional paving width. So no issues with a plat in principle. But we are recommending denial on the variances. So the applicant's requesting no street or alley improvements at all. This would leave about a 150-foot gap on 48th and 49th. I understand the argument on Bowie. At least Bowie's at 30 already, but staff believes going to 0 feet is going to shift the cost to the taxpayers of the city of San Angelo, or alternatively a future developer, to close that gap. Now it's true that the 6 lots will now reorient and face Bowie Street. I'm just going to go back quickly to the plat, show you. So if they leave this and someone comes in and develops these lots in the future, or even these lots up here, basically all of these lots to the east of this line are going to be landlocked because they can't, nobody's going to build this road and nobody's going to build that road. And that's the concern that staff has. It's not going to, from a functional perspective, from an engineering perspective, and also from a financial perspective, we don't believe that those variances are warranted. We don't believe, there's 4 tests, of course, for a variance. Would it be detrimental? We don't. I think any developer that comes in would have to do that 40-foot paving width or seek a variance. And as mentioned with Town View and other cases today, 36 feet, 34 feet, when we're talking increments like that, and staff has recommended, you all have recommended and supported variances. Going from 40 feet to 0, I think, is the problem. It's just such a drastic change. We don't believe that it's a unique situation in that, true, all of the lots in Lakeview to the east aren't developed yet, but at some point they will. That was a legally platted subdivision, and so why they weren't done at the time, and probably in 1906, those standards weren't enforced at the time of platting, and now they are. So sooner or later, some developer's going to have to pay for those costs. We don't believe there's a hardship. The right-of-ways are 60 feet wide, as mentioned, and can do the paving. And fourthly, allowing a deficiency in the streets would contravene our minimum planning and engineering standards. And so we don't believe that we can support that. We're certainly willing to look at different options available or financial options if the developer has any suggestions, but we just can't support a variance to 0 feet. 50 notifications were mailed out. We have not received any back in favor or in opposition of this request. So I just took some photographs so you all can see sort of what we're looking at here. Bowie Street is 30 feet wide. It's a little bit deficient, and so because now you've got 6 extra lots on Bowie, planning and engineering's position would be to provide the incremental half of the 5 feet. They can also provide a financial guarantee if they'd like, and not actually pave it right now, but the city would have to recover those costs. This is looking east at the subject lots, and then as you go east on 48th Street and 49th, so the development would basically be down here. Staff recommends approval of the first replat in Block 11 Lakeview Addition, but denial from 10382 of the subdivision ordinance to allow minimum paving width of 30 feet and no curb and gutter for Bowie Street and Urban Local Street. Denial of a variance to allow minimum paving width of 0 feet and no curb and gutter for East 48th Street and Urban Local Street. Denial of a variance to allow minimum paving width of 0 feet and no curb and gutter for East 49th Street and Urban Local Street. Denial from Chapter 10382 of the ordinance to allow a 15-foot east-west alley with an unpaved surface. And I just wanted to cover this quickly. The staff is okay with a caliche, a 2-course-based surface, just not no paving at all, because the developer didn't specify that on the application. We certainly raise that and work with the developer on that if they are okay with putting in a caliche surface as a minimum, or they call it compact base, but just not have no paving at all, because for emergencies or for utilities, we may need to get access in there in the future. Denial of the variance to allow a 15-foot east-west alley in lieu of the required 20, and to set aside a variance to allow a 15-foot north-south alley no longer required, as the alley will now be 20 feet. So we'll set aside that last one because they do have 20 feet now. Subject to the 10 conditions of approval. Copy of the tax certificate, improve Bowie Street financial guarantee or variance, improve East 48th Street financial guarantee or variance, improve 49th Street financial guarantee or variance, revise the plat to show 20-foot alleys or variance, corner cutoffs at the intersection of alleys, submit plans and construct the alleys with 6-inch compact roadway base, submit plans and install the water main and sewer connections, submit plans and install the sewer main and sewer connections, and install the water and wastewater service lines to each lot. So this concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
I got a lot of questions.
I was going to say one thing, Jeff, you might touch on is the developer would not be required to pave the full 40 feet.
Yeah, that's one of my questions.
That's correct. That's correct.
If we could start by going back to an overview of the site. Yeah, go back. Wait. Yeah. Okay. So
Hillary's correct. So if they have to extend 49th, they're only responsible for their incremental half.
Right.
Now, normally, if you have an infill project like this, what's half of 40 is 20. But for minimum emergency, fire, and engineering standards, the minimum would have to be 26. So that first developer would be responsible. So it'd be only 26 feet here, only 26 feet here, and then an additional 5 feet on Bowie. Bowie's already 30, so they give their incremental half. That's 35. If these developers here ever go to redevelop, they'd give their 5.
okay. So what's east?
East is, these are platted lots, like I say, part of the Lakeview addition, but they were not, back in 1906, they didn't require those, probably didn't require those subdivision standards, at least until they came in and permitted. That's a good question because no one was around that early in time, but I think going forward, the current subdivision ordinance, the trigger would be as soon as you go into to plat the lots. And so once they platted the lots, we have to enforce those standards at this time.
Are 48th or 49th Street paved east of this site?
No,
Okay. Is there development east of this site?
there's not, no.
Okay. How far east of this site is undeveloped?
I believe it goes another 4 blocks this way and 4 blocks that way.
I thought it was two blocks.
It might be 2.
It would connect to a future street to the east, 2 blocks over.
But 48th and 49th do not exist east of this site.
That is
that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is the width of buoy?
With the buoy is 30 feet right now,
What is the width of buoy south of this site?
at 30 feet as well.
So it's 30 feet everywhere.
Yes, there is at some point, so this is 48th. There's no curb and gutter right now. When you hit 44th Street, I believe, and then all the way down to the southerly end, there is curb and gutter. I don't know if the city had come in. I had talked to engineering. They might know the answer to that question. But at some point, I think either the other developers or the city had filled in some of those curbs. But
Well,
it did
and
stop at 44th.
You just saw a plat earlier, the Manning edition, where
Yes.
buoy was 36 feet wide with curb and gutter.
How far south is that?
Shelley, what's the cross street? Yeah, it's south quite a bit, but it is to the south of this property.
And then the widths of 48th and 49th are really not applicable to this applicant because you're requiring a minimum of 26 feet?
That's right. And I'm estimating on this side, it's somewhere between 32 and 36 feet on 49th and 48th this way. But again, they're only responsible for the 26 on their half.
So you made mention that the property surrounding this would be landlocked?
Yes, because what's going to happen is on this side here, let's say these lots go to develop and they come in.
They don't have a road to get to.
They don't have a road to get there.
But the future developer could put the road in.
They could, but what's going to happen is not only are they going to be responsible for this piece, someone's going to have to cover this gap of 150 and 150 here. So whether that's either going to be the city of San Angelo, so residents here, or it's going to be through some sort of, I don't know, CIP project or something else. But if they came in today and the city, let's say, didn't put any funds allocated to that developer, as I understand it, would have to cover this and this. There'd be no way to get there otherwise.
Okay. Is the alley in the mid-block for access to the rear of the lots?
Technically, no. It's for utilities. It could serve to provide access as well. But obviously, if these roads were paved, then they would have access through here and through here. So this is really this could be for access, and it also serves as a extension of future utilities. There's a water line and a sewer line on Bowie right now.
Okay. Is the alley west of these lots 20 feet wide?
No, it would be 15, and so this here would be 15, and then if they if we support that, they'd have 2.5 feet on either side through an easement. So that would be, I guess, like to get engineering's perspective on that too, if they would be okay with that.
To run both water and sewer through the alley, you need 20 feet. A lot of this area is developed where not both the water and sewer run through the alley.
Right.
So I think at the time, the developer was looking to put both water and sewer through this alley, which would need to be 20 feet. And that's what the subdivision ordinance requires. So the replat would cause that to trigger. But again, most of the alleys in this area are 15 feet. They just don't allow water and sewer.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have questions for the staff? You guys got your minds wrapped around this thing? Okay. Thank you, Jeff. We're going to open it up for public comment. I guess if there's representatives for the applicant that could come forward, it would really help us.
Morning. I'm Michael Biggerstaff with New Home Constructors.
Chad Decker, New Home Constructors.
First, I want to start out. Y'all seen us before. You know what we're doing in the Lakeview area. revitalization. As you know, we have been required to extend water and sewer and/or either one of the two on everything we've done in Lakeview. Tremendous expense for affordable housing. This was an opportunity for us to take and reorient the lots that were platted to be able to utilize existing water and sewer, to not have to expend the funds to add water and sewer. Our issue is the paving that they're requesting for 48th and 49th. Our position is, why should we have to pave that? And contrary to Mr. Fisher's statement, that property behind those lots, those proposed lots, will not be landlocked. And everywhere we have gone in and developed and reoriented lots and built homes, people were encouraged to sell us additional land. We're hoping we get the land behind it. We're hoping. And if we do, we will pave those 48th and 49th. And we will extend water and sewer because there's 80 available lots. So I want you to keep that in mind as you make your decision. The alleys that are in this area today, I wish you'd drive over there and look at them because they're not usable by the city. They're not utilized in any shape, form, or fashion by waste disposal, emergency vehicles, because they cannot be used. So the alley issue is irrelevant to us. We've already agreed to widen the 15-foot alley to 20 foot for future easement, for future utility easement. But the way the lots are proposed, we have water and sewer available and can immediately start building those lots. Those lots are basically sold and will continue us to fulfill the obligations we have to buyers. Thank you.
Mr. Biggerstaff, before you go, I think the comment that the staff was making about paving 48th and 49th Street was about the access for those lots that are east of you.
Correct.
So you're saying that they're not landlocked because the road exists.
Correct.
But the financial burden would be placed on the developers of those lots east of you if they wish to have that access. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. That's
Okay.
exactly right.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to add a few things.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to be all over the place, so bear with me. First off, there's a manhole about right here, the second red dot. When we developed these 4 lots right here, they had water only, no sewer. So we extended the sewer down here, added a manhole, and came across with a sewer to those 4 lots, $56,000. When we extended that sewer, by that point, now we have sewer access to these 3, plus the existing sewer to these 3, and then there is a water main that already comes down Oaklawn there. So we've already been on the side of having to add utilities to existing lots. A couple other things to keep in mind is all of the lots back to the east, everything on this side of 49th, both sides of 49th down here, and then across both sides of 48th. There's like roughly 80 lots, and I could be off 6 or 8 lots. And those lots are owned by 10 or 12 different people.
Okay.
And we've looked at trying to purchase those lots. Some of them want to sell, some of them don't want to sell. The only way that it will ever be feasibly available to develop any of that land to the east is if a person can purchase everything, because of the expense of putting in the roads and the water and sewer. It doesn't make financial sense to go in and buy 4 lots and extend the roadway down. What we're trying to do is, based on the results of the most recent housing study that was done, provide affordable housing.
Yes, sir.
By turning these lots this way, we've got water and sewer in the front. We have no problem clearing the right-of-way for the streets of 48th and 49th and putting that access of the alley down the back in case there is emergency. But like Mr. Biggerstaff said, most of the alleys in that area are not used anyway. A lot of them have mesquite trees this big around in them. So it's not something that's used on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis.
Okay.
And we have cleaned some of them up. So all we're trying to do is turn the lots, use the existing street width, which is consistent all the way down Oak Lawn for several blocks. The same thing with 48th and 49th, and put some affordable housing in that the city desperately needs.
Okay.
So you would be happy to exempt any paving, curb, and gutter and maintain a paving width of 0 feet for 48th Street and 49th Street? That's what you'd be happy with?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there's going to be no, you don't want to put any material down in the alleyways. You just want to leave them undeveloped.
I mean, you could put some base material down, but
Yes.
but I think it's throwing money away because I don't think those alleys would ever be
They're not going to be utilized. Okay.
And you know, as far as extending, this alley right here has a sewer only in it.
Okay.
And whoever cleared the screen, thank you. No, I'm glad you did. But there's water here and sewer here, and then sewer here. So we're fine widening that alleyway to 20 feet if water and sewer ever needs to be extended. I could see the sewer going down that, but more than likely the water would come down the streets.
Okay.
Now, if we widen that alleyway to 20 feet, we would have to get a variance on the lot widths, which we can't.
Erica Carter, CFE Engineering. This has kind of gone back and forth, so sorry for interrupting.
That's okay.
But in lieu of the 20-foot width in the alley there, because of the lot width, we put in a 2.5-foot utility easement on each side. So that would allow, and I believe staff supported that, that would allow for future advancement instead of.
You can't widen the alley because you can't meet the minimum lot widths of the lots that you've platted.
Speaking with staff, we went ahead and put in a 2.5-foot utility easement on each side.
Okay.
And we would support that.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. So the alleys, with the exception of the city's requirement for paving, are essentially resolved between the staff and you guys. It's a matter of the roads on 48th and 49th Street and the right-of-way widths and the curb and gutter requirements that you guys have the greatest objection to the city's request. And the utility extension.
Yes, sir.
And please keep in mind the fact that that particular area, you can go blocks and blocks, and there are no curb and gutter.
Right.
And we've addressed that in a previous.
Yes, sir. And we've seen that. We understand.
Yes.
We understand that.
Right.
What's the utility extension? Are you just talking about the cost that you guys incurred to extend the sewer line, or is there additional?
I think staff was wanting us to extend water and sewer back.
Staff's position was for us to have to, or for these guys to have to extend sewer main and water main either here and here, or come through the alley here and do a sewer and water there.
Okay.
We already have connections for these 6 houses, or 6 homes here.
Okay.
But in speaking with staff, and I know it's not listed here on, I guess, the variances, and maybe Lance can come up and visit with us about that. We were told that you couldn't do a variance for extension mains, yet it's part of the platting process. So I'd like to have some clarification on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
And one other comment I'll make, there again, the reason for our objection to have to extend that water and sewer down 48th and 49th, and even this alleyway, is the fact that the only thing that's going to encourage development on those future lots is us doing this.
Yes, sir.
We will probably be the people with the burden to provide that water and that sewer and that paving.
Okay.
And we recognize that. Right. If we are able to acquire the additional properties, we will do that. It's in our best interest to do that.
Right. You would have to.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Decker or Mr. Biggerstaff? Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Mr. Overstreet.
Lance Overstreet Engineering Services. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have, and also to address any concerns about this.
So it is a requirement of the city when you plat these lots to extend the water and sewer lines eastward?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Does it matter where?
The one reason that we had requested the 2.5 foot of utility easement is to give the option for the developer to only have to extend one water line and one sewer line in that alleyway. We were willing to make that concession, and this way they wouldn't have the burden of having to do a water line on 48th and a water line on 49th and the sewer, and so you end up having with multiple different things. And so we were actually willing to work with them to have those things extended down that alleyway with the additional easement.
So what you would propose and allow is the extension of the water and sewer mains through the alleyway that's running at the midpoint of these lots.
Yeah, and that was as a workaround to help them also too with some of the costs that's involved with those utility extensions.
Okay.
And one thing that engineering looks at in terms of all of this is that the way the ordinance is written is for an incremental development to occur. And so what ends up happening is we see that as development occurs, it typically occurs abutting to adjacent development.
Sure.
And the reason for that is because if you skip, you do have that incremental extreme cost to make those connections. And so even new homes has been the unfortunate burden of having to extend utilities past areas because someone else didn't do their incremental part. And so this is the exact same situation we're looking at here, to where if the replat doesn't do their incremental part, then that burden is going to be shifted to someone else down the road, either that person or that city. And we actually have lots, all these lots that are in this area here are already platted. They could actually come in for a permit, and if 48th or 49th were extended down, utilities were extended down, they could actually build on those lots today with only having to do the lot front footage portion of their extensions. And so it is unfortunate that New Homes has been in a position where they had to extend services all the way down because it wasn't done. We can't rewind and go back to the 1900s when these plats were done. All we can really do is look at how the subdivision ordinance is written today for everyone to do their incremental part, and everybody makes that connection and that extension as things go forward. And
try to avoid shifting that burden to someone
else.
Yeah.
And ideally, we would love for New Homes to be the one to build out the rest of these. However, they have even said that there are some owners that do not want to sell.
Right.
Well, if you're a homeowner that's been sitting on those lots for years and years, just waiting for someone else to actually finally do their incremental part, this captures that and will actually allow it to continue to be developed either by those owners, by other developers, or by New Homes. And I also want to call to your attention that we do now have the incentive that's being offered for infill. And the reason the incentive was put in place was to help offset the burden of some of these utilities and some of these roadways. And so every one of these 6 houses is actually eligible for that $5,000 incentive for infill in this area. And so at the time of closing, they can actually apply for that incentive and essentially reap about $30,000 worth of incentive from the city, and that was designated for the purpose of offsetting some of those burdens and costs of the infrastructure improvements.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Overstreet? Thank you. Yes, sir.
Chad Decker again, New Home Constructors. When we're talking about financial burden, one thing I do want to mention is, some of this stuff is a result of things not being taken care of in decades ago.
Yes, sir.
Just north of these lots right here, we have 4 lots on Lakeview Heroes Drive, which used to be 50th.
Yes, sir.
We are having to pay to extend water and sewer from this point down the alley, across the back of these, and go all the way to Oak Lawn and tie in the water line. Hadn't been that many years ago, the city of San Angelo put in a brand new Lakeview Heroes Drive.
Yes, sir.
However, when they did that, they extended
didn't
no
extend
water
it.
and sewer to the 4 lots that we have that have been platted there since the 1900s.
Yes, sir.
So you can look at it on that, that side either way. Concerning the $5,000 incentive, we think it's a fabulous idea and very grateful for the city extending that. However, extending the pavement here, and the utilities you're probably looking at roughly $200,000 or more, is what our estimates are. So you've got $5,000 a lot incentive money there, so 30 grand. Our profit margin on these homes is $10,000 to $15,000 a home. So you would actually, by building these 6 homes with what the city's proposing, go in the hole. I mean, it doesn't make financial sense to do that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, we're still in public comment, so if anyone else would like to come up and speak on this case, please do so. All right, I'm going to close public comment. So if the requirement is to pave 48th and 49th Street, they could provide a financial guarantee. They don't have to do it immediately, do they?
That's correct.
So at what point would they be required to pave 48th and 49th Street? If someone east of them wanted access?
Well, they would have to do it or provide the financial guarantee for the city to do it. The pavement would have to be there prior to the homes being constructed or before.
Hold on, Lance has come in to speak to that as well.
Oh, great.
So the options, Lance Overstreet Engineering Services again, the way the performance guarantee or the financial guarantee is set up, it's a 18-month window that they actually set that up, and it can be done by either a bank note. There's several different means and methods to secure that. And what that allows is that allows the plat to be recorded immediately and permits to be issued. However, within that 18-month period, they are allowed to extend it. So they can actually go up to 3 years without paving that. At that point, if at that 3-year period it has not been done, then the city is required to actually pull that financial guarantee and then take care of that roadway. At any point, if they make that improvement though, that improvement then we sign off on it and those funds are basically put back to them and or the bank note is removed.
How do you determine the amount of the guarantee?
The amount of guarantee is determined by an engineering estimate. And so what happens is the developer sends an estimate to engineering. We review those to see if those costs are within the range that we believe are normally acceptable for the area and the time of construction and what we're seeing trend-wise. And then we approve that. They actually sign the documents for the performance guarantee, let us know if they're going to be doing a letter of credit or if it's going to be a cash bond or if it's going to be a bank note. All that stuff is signed and then approved, and then it actually is required to be put on and available when they actually record the plat. So at a minimum, the agreement has to be in place prior to the plat recordation. And or if those infrastructure improvements are put in, then when it's put in, the plat is approved then.
Okay.
Let me add one thing.
Yes, sir.
You may recall not too long ago, we updated the subdivision ordinance. You all recommended approval, adding a deferral option to the financial guarantees. So in this case, there would be another option that would allow them to enter into a development agreement that could extend that beyond the 3 years, which could effectively say they don't have to build it today, but when and if those properties behind ever develop
Yes.
and need to build that road, then they would still be responsible for that section.
Okay.
So that's another option you all could consider.
What happens with that as those lots sell out? As those lots are taken down, how does that obligation get transferred?
That obligation would carry with the properties, so.
You split it 6 ways in this case?
Yes. And that could be worked out between the developer and the buyers so that if the developer wanted to hold on to that responsibility, but yes, it would stay with the land. And so if those properties don't develop for 20 years, we would be coming back to those lot owners and saying, hey, remember 20 years ago, you agreed to do this.
Okay.
And we've had, over the history of, there has been some times when the city has put in roadways and put in liens on properties and things like that, and it is difficult to go back 20 years and try to recoup any of that stuff.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's the thing, is it goes back and back and back, and finally the city has written off hundreds of thousands of dollars for work that was done in the 50s. And I want to say that there were some roadways where the city came in the 50s, did the work. Shane Kelton, when he actually started and became the operations manager, still had some of those that had never been taken care of. And then finally they just decided it just wasn't worth carrying it on the books and wrote those things off. And so those kinds of things, delaying it down the road is difficult. I think also too, strategically, if one of those other lots were to come in and say, I'm ready for my permit today, we would have to deny it until the road gets put in. And then we'd have to then contact the developer and say, hey, you know, that road that you promised to put in as a development agreement, it's got to be put in now. You know, if that's the direction you guys want to go, you know, we'll support that. I just think there's, you know, timing and things like that. It could be difficult with that particular option. So.
Thank you.
Do they also have the option of putting just a base on that section of road, like 48th and 49th? No, it has to be paved.
To meet minimum, that's what, the 26 foot is a minimum fire standard as well for, you know, fire protection and all that. So they would require the paved road. And the subdivision ordinance speaks to when you subdivide a property, not only do you pave the roads internal to your subdivision, but you pave the incremental half directly adjacent to your subdivision. So that's what we're looking at here, is just meeting the subdivision ordinance requirements.
Well, I was told one time that if it doesn't pencil on paper, it doesn't pencil in brick and mortar. And if they're required to do the streets and extend the utilities, this deal isn't going to get done. And it's providing low-income housing for a much-needed low-income housing. And two, the early bird gets the worm. You know, I don't think that they should have to build the roads and extend the utilities.
Okay.
That's for future development.
Look, I think that if anyone had attended the State of the City address not too long ago, you would have heard that our city leaders, particularly our mayor, we know that we are in a huge need of affordable housing in this city. And I can tell you, having attended 5 State of the City addresses in 5 different cities, 2 of which are our sister cities, this subject comes up in every single one of them. One city in particular has a new mayor and is concentrating very hard on figuring out a way to get affordable housing in that city. And I can tell you, the only way you're going to do it, especially in some of these older neighborhoods where you're dealing with 50, 60, 70, and older plats than that, is concessions, right? We are going to have to start giving concessions to some of these projects in order to get what we need and get what our city leaders are trying to get, right? The only way you're going to get people to move to a city and to stay in a city long-term is to give them an affordable place to live, right? And that is going on in several different cities. Concessions is the only way that we're going to be able to get there. We are not going to be able to put the burden on the builders and the developers. We can't absorb all of it. If we start doing that, then we are not going to get it, right? They're going to take their projects elsewhere. There are cities that are competing for affordable housing. They can go outside the city where you can drive 6 miles to work, right? So we need to ensure that we are thinking about this long-term and allowing these folks to come in and do these projects in a sensible manner, or they're just flat out not going to do them.
I think the challenge with this specific development is that the city is offering incentives. The incentives do not cover the cost that's required by our subdivision ordinance, and in this case, extending those roads. The problem with not extending those roads is that undeveloped land east just has a substantial cost elevation associated with the development of those lots. So we take the low-hanging fruit, but we've cut off all of that undeveloped platted land from being built out because we just shifted the cost burden of getting the road along the side of these lots onto those guys. So this is a real challenge. And there are some significant costs associated with doing it. I don't think there's a great solution to this problem. There's a big cost burden on someone that's going to have to be shouldered. And I don't necessarily think it's the city's responsibility to foot the bill for that. The city's not going to foot the bill if we grant a variance on not paving these roads and someone comes in and wants to build a house just east of these lots. The city's going to say either build the road to Bowie or you can't build on that lot. So that's the challenge. And here's the other issue. These guys are the first to it. So what's the width of that road? 30 feet?
Yeah, Bowie's 30 feet.
What's the width of 48th Street?
Well, right on the other side.
On the other side.
I don't know exactly. I believe it is somewhere between 32 and 36.
Okay.
26.
So let's say it's 30 feet. Their half would be 15, but the city's asking them to put in 26. Is that correct? Because of fire lane egress or fire access egress. So that's an extra 11 feet that they're having to foot the bill for. That's not fair. I mean, I think the most that they should be responsible for is their incremental half on those two streets. This is a challenge.
I was going to say earlier, I think the challenge for us as staff is we have those minimum standards. The subdivision ordinance, outlines that, and so we're always looking forward to if there's flexibility or different options. And I think that we're certainly open to different options. We appreciate the developer making their case as well. I think those would be the same standards regardless of where you are now. So either we look at changing those standards, or we look at a developer agreement, or we look at something else that we haven't thought of yet. But I definitely think the intent is we want this project to happen, but we have to, if the standards say it has to be 40 feet, then we're going to indicate that. But if we find something, to work around that, we'd certainly be open to it.
So is there a way that we can make them responsible for only their incremental half, but not to pave the additional 11 feet or so that would be required for fire, life, safety access along those roads to undeveloped lots?
We were just discussing that because if you go back to the map, Jeff.
And then we're back in a scenario where it's pretty consistent with new development as opposed to infill.
Realistically, since all of these lots front on Bowie, until the lots develop further back, you probably don't need fire access on the sides.
Exactly.
So I think we would probably need to check with engineering and fire marshal's office to confirm. But I think in this case, only having them do their actual half rather than
their incremental half,
than the minimum 26, might be possible in this case.
Okay. Staff, can you give us the width of 49th and 48th Street, just west of these sides?
I believe the developers mentioned 26, and I think that is possible. I thought it was 30, but it could be as low as 26.
Okay. Anyone have thoughts on this?
Could you go back to the approval? I would make a motion to approve, but not require to exempt any paving, curb, or gutter and maintain a paving width of 0 feet. I make the motion to approve no paving on 48th Street and 49th Street and not require water and sewer extensions.
I don't think that we can,
Yeah, I just want to clarify.
Can we do that?
Yeah, there's not a variance requested, and we don't think a variance would be allowed on the water and sewer. It is addressed in the condition, so I guess you could not make it a condition, but the city would still enforce that through its ordinance once this got developed.
I think if we're going to make a motion, we've got to go through these 3 items and yay or nay, and then what's on the next page. So we've got another 3 items on this page, set aside at the bottom. Oh, no, the alley, the last denial of variance for 15-foot east-west alley, that's been resolved with the easement.
That's right. So I think staff's on the same page here, so we would recommend approval of, so this would be to approve.
So go back to the first page, please.
I think if you're voting on that, I think formally we would need you to say on that particular variance that you would vote to approve it, conditioned on the 2.5-foot easements on either side.
Right, okay. So the last item that we haven't talked about is Bowie, and it's 30 feet wide. Is there any curb and gutter in the adjacent area?
No, not until you hit 44th Street to the south. There's no curb and gutter north of 44th Street on Bowie.
Okay. So we've got curb and gutter requirement on Bowie and the minimum width of 30 feet. What's the width of Bowie?
Width of Bowie's 30, so what
Okay,
we're asking for.
So we can maintain the width, just note you're recommending a denial of the curb and gutter requirement on Bowie.
We're recommending of a denial of the variance to allow 30 feet and a denial of since it's part of the same street standard, so denial of a variance to allow 30 feet with no curb and gutter. So that would require, if you did not support the variance, they would be required to put curb and gutter in as well as an additional 5 feet to cover their incremental half.
Okay. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
It's a tough decision, but I mean, I agree with as far as encouraging the development of affordable housing in the area and having to make certain concessions as such. So.
Yes.
I'm struggling with finding a way to move forward with this without, like you said, shifting the burden for additional development of 80 lots.
Right, east.
To
the area east.
Someone else in the future, and even though it may, and probably most likely, will be this developer, we don't know that.
Not the case today.
Right.
So we can't make a decision based on what could happen. We have to make it on what's here.
I guess the challenge is too, the extension of 48th and 49th, and we want water and sewer down that.
Well, they're just gonna go down that alley.
Right.
Just the width of their lot.
In the middle, in the center?
Yes.
Okay.
So what's the width?
Because
Is that
those are-
150 feet? Is that what we're talking about, the width of these lots? The depth, I'm sorry, the depth of the lots is 150 feet?
Yes.
So the city's asking them to extend water and sewer 150 feet east down the middle of their tract and pave. We're not sure yet how much they're asking them to pave, but they would be typically responsible for an incremental half of 48th and 49th. And I think extending the width of 48th and 49th eastward would be the most reasonable. I don't think it's fair to go to the current subdivision standards for 48th as we work our way east. Like, just maintain whatever the width was just west of Bowie. Is what I would think would be fair. Take the incremental half of 48th and 49th at the widths that are just west of Bowie Street.
I go back to, this has to be profitable or they're not going to do any of it.
Yes. Yes. And we may need, and the way to make it profitable is to get larger tracks. I mean, if you've got to pave any of a street, the more lots you can access with the paving that you put down, the more profitable it is. And I understand that it's an infill, but again, look at the owners that are just east of these lots. Is it fair to, if someone wants to build out 4 or 5 lots just east of this, to say you're going to pay for your incremental half of your frontage of this road plus the 150 feet that these owners were granted a variance on in order to get access to Bowie?
And I think that's what I was getting at too with my comments a second ago, is that if you shift that cost of developing these lots to the next 3 behind it, then
They're not
that's definitely not going to happen.
Well, that's why I say the early bird gets the worm. I mean, they're here, they're doing.
But it also goes to the same exact issue that they ran into with extending sewer, right? They had 4 lots that were just north, and they had to take the sewer line up to 49th Street to get those lots built out because the sewer line wasn't there yet.
Well, it's my feeling that at least we get 6 houses built. And if we don't get 6 houses built, we're not going to get any.
Okay, that's fair. I understand that argument.
Is there any way to break this into pieces as we make these motions?
Yes, you could make a motion on each individual variance.
I mean, I'm just trying to find a way to simplify this.
So that, if you think there may be some disagreement on individual variances, you could take them one at a time, and then at the very end, vote to approve the plat with the variances as you voted on each one individually. Or you could take, for example, you could take the 48th and 49th and vote on them together if that made sense.
Or make a motion to exclude those and make a separate motion to address them. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but I would save the motion to approve the plat till last after you've addressed
Obviously.
each variance, right?
Yeah, okay.
No matter what, this will be going to city council.
It's very likely. This is one that raises some very critical issues that if you deny the variances, I suspect the applicant will appeal that to council. If you approve the variances, we'll have to discuss it as staff, but it could be appealed to council as well.
Can we pass it to city council?
No.
No punting.
Your obligation as a board, and the reason they've appointed you here is to make recommendations and decisions to them.
It's a challenge with this one because the way they've turned these lots, they're set up and ready to go with their utilities and everything. They can move forward.
That's another good point, though. If they didn't reorient the lots,
Then they would
we
have
wouldn't be
to.
having this conversation
No.
about 48th and 49th because they would have to pave them.
Yes. They will.
So
it's a challenge both ways.
it is. It is. But the responsibility for the lots that they own, I think they have to carry that responsibility unless otherwise we're shifting the burden to the next guy.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge with this project. I'm all for housing. What I don't want to do is make a decision up here that costs us the ability to make further expansions in this area down the road. And if we're deferring costs to others, we are elevating those costs to those folks as well. So.
How much money are we spending on Bell Street?
Is it about 18 million? Is that
A lot. The answer is a lot.
Which part? Land Silver Street Engineering Services. The total price tag of Bell Street, I think, is in that 18 to 21 million. Of course, it's a concrete roadway. It is a wider arterial roadway, and then also too, the utilities in this particular instance, in some cases, are 30 foot deep in rock. And so we have some very, very
You're having to redo the utilities, are you not?
We are having to redo all the water, all the sewer, widen the roadways, curb and gutter, sidewalks. The city is actually building that out in its, not to the full 60 foot, but we are building it out and making it to where it will hopefully last 50 years. So.
So when you put it in context, this in context with that, I just think we ought to get the houses built.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, sir. Thank you. Sure. Let's go.
I take the
Bowie Street, what do we want to do
I'll
with
take the
Bowie Street?
low-hanging
Yeah.
fruit, I think. And
Let's grab all the low-hanging fruit.
I'll move to approve the variance to allow a minimum paving width of 30 feet and no curb and gutter on Bowie.
All right. Can you go to the next slide, please, Jeff? Is that the only part of your motion, or are you going to extend your motion?
Bowie first. If you
Yeah,
want.
let's do that.
Okay.
Can we do that? We'll tackle each one and then we'll
Sure.
tackle it all at the end.
All right, so we have a motion to grant the variance for Bowie.
Are we looking at it right now?
No, it's on the previous slide.
Okay.
So we have a motion to grant the variance to allow the minimum paving width of 30 feet and no curb and gutter for Bowie Street. Do we have a second?
That's how it stands right now, right?
Right,
It'll
but,
stay the way.
but the staff's recommending a denial of that variance. So we have a motion and a second to grant the variance for Bowie Street, maintaining the existing 30-foot width, no curb and gutter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, so item 1 was 6-0 in favor. Next page, please.
So the first two just deal with the surface of the alley. They are asking for no improvements. The ordinance currently allows for a base to be an option.
What alley are we talking about? The one behind the houses or the one through the center?
There's two of them here.
Okay.
One addresses each one.
Gotcha. Okay,
So the first one is the 15-foot east-west. That's the one that runs between, through the center of the development.
Okay.
3 above, 3 below. And the second one is the 20-foot alley that runs on the east side of the lots, the back of the
I
lots.
don't see the reason for an alley if water and sewer already exists, and we don't have alley services for trash.
Right.
Well, and that's, one question you could ask is why not just replat without the alleys?
Are they required to have alleys?
They are not. They could replat without the alleys, but if, Jeff, could you go back to the graphic?
Do they need the alleys for the utility connections?
I would defer to them on that, if they could do it without the alleys. And I think my guess is, and I guess I'll defer to the applicant, if this alley is not here, then because of these lots that face that way.
Yes.
This side yard here, the setback for the home would have to be a 25-foot setback, similar to the setback of homes that in the future would be built here. And so under our ordinance, if there's an alley here, then this becomes just a 5-foot side setback.
Got it. Okay. So you guys want the alley, I'm assuming? Yeah, okay.
And under our ordinance, if you build an alley, you either have to pave it if you're having rear access. So if they were building garages off the rear, then they would have to pave it. The alternative, if you're not having rear access, is to put a base down. Under our current ordinance, there's no option to plat an alley but then not build anything on it.
Okay.
So does the issue lie with our ordinance and setback requirements
That's why they want the alley.
corner lots?
They want the 5-foot side setback for the north and south lots.
Right.
A corner lot would have, if it does not have
If
an
they
alley,
didn't
would
have an
have
alley,
two
they'd be
frontages.
25 foot.
It's, in order to keep the block face, as you go down the street, to keep the block face looking similar, the street, the homes would have to be set back double frontage is what we call it. But the alley itself would divide that out and create basically two separate areas, which would not create the double frontage.
They would, just for your information, they would have the ability, if, for example, they wanted to replat this without the alleys, they could go to the Board of Adjustment and ask for a reduced side setback on that side. But that's
Right.
another step
That's
for
another
them to
step.
jump through.
Right.
With no guarantee, of course.
Understand.
So can I make a motion just on?
You want to make a motion on the alleys? Or you want to make a
Where
motion
is it?
on?
Where's the alley?
So the top two are whether there's any paving surface or material of any kind put in the alleys. And the bottom two are, well, the last one's been set aside. The third one is, would be to grant the variance with the easement to allow it to be 20 feet.
We're now
of
recommending
access.
approval of that one.
So I make the motion for the variances from Chapter 10, 3A2 of the LDSO to allow a 15-foot east-west alley with an unpaved surface, and variance to allow a 20-foot north-south alley with an unpaved surface.
Just to clarify, by unpaved surface, you mean no caliche, no pavement, no nothing?
That's right.
Okay.
Will we also need to specify that there could be no rear access to these can we put that restriction in here if we're granting a variance for no improvements?
I think to be clear, that might be helpful, although if they ever do want to go to rear access, they would likely have to pave the alley at that point anyway.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'll just leave it like it is.
Okay. So we have a motion to grant the variances for no paving surfaces or improvements to the alleyways for both the east-west alley and the north-south alley. And we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
We get a hand of those who opposed.
4-2.
Okay.
I'd like for there to be a requirement or some note about rear access for those alleys.
We can add a note on the approval that would note if rear access is ever provided.
Do we need to
those
make a
lots.
motion for that? I mean, that's the reason that I don't support unpaved.
They've already agreed, and I believe that requirement
Okay.
is in the subdivision ordinance.
Okay. No problem.
And I believe that if we ever saw a structure that was permitted that allowed for alley access like a garage, the permitting would actually trigger that they would have to do something. We've had that on several instances where carports and garages were permitted, and at that point, if the alley is not paved, that is actually carried as a portion of it, that it has to be a paved approach to that.
Okay.
And that's usually at the permitting cycle that we see that at.
Okay. All right, so we're through the paving or unpaving of the alleys. We've cleared up Bowie. Does anyone want to address the 15-foot east-west alley with the,
I make the motion to allow the variance to allow the 15-foot north-south alley no longer required, as the alley will now be 20 feet.
north-south? Okay, so that's the last one.
And actually,
And
that
that
one
one's
was
been
set
set
aside,
aside.
so you do not need to take any action on that.
We need the one right.
They've
So
addressed.
the east-west alley, we would approve if they provided a 2.5-foot easement for the lots north and south of the alley.
So I make the motion to approve the variance to allow a 15-foot east-west alley in lieu of the required 20 feet
Easement?
with the easement. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to allow for the 15-foot east-west alley with a 2.5-foot easement for the lots immediately north and south of that alley.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we're 6-0 there. So now we're down to 48th and 49th Street. That's all that's left, correct? And, of course, the plat, yes. All right, anyone want to make a motion on 48th or 49th Street?
I make the motion to allow the variances on 48th and 49th Street to allow a minimum paving width of 0 feet and no curb and gutter, an urban local street.
All right, we have a motion. We do not have a second. Does anyone else wish to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the variances. No, I'll withdraw. I can't.
It's okay. Even if you can elaborate, can maybe give us some of your thoughts, we can
Okay,
help.
so what I'd like to propose is having the developer be responsible for their incremental half of those streets based on a street width, assuming the street width in the
West.
existing street west is 26 feet.
Okay,
You would be approving a partial variance for to allow them to build their incremental half. The width to be determined by the street directly adjacent to the west.
that street, west, yes.
Yeah, each
48th Street
and
west.
49th respectively.
West of Bowie, 49th Street west of Bowie. So we have a motion to allow for the developer to be responsible only for the incremental half of the lots with a width based on 48th Street and 49th Street immediately west of Bowie.
Are you gonna defer those costs?
I think that's allowed.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The
Defer those
cost.
costs, to allow them to defer those costs?
Allow them to what? I'm sorry.
To defer the, putting in those streets until they,
Yeah, they have two options. They could do, if you approve this variance, they could have a financial guarantee, which would still meet this, or if they seek to create some sort of developer's agreement, we could do that as well. Staff could work that out as well.
Okay?
so the deferral, not necessarily have to put up the money right now.
Okay.
Well,
So-
yeah, I don't think we have to include that in our.
Yeah, he was asking about a deferral. So if they make the motion to approve this, we could still do a developer's agreement if the developers, the staff and the developer could work together.
Are we required to make a motion if we're granting a deferral of the paving?
That's allowed in the.
If the developer wants to defer?
It would be, if that's your intent, I think it would be safer to include that
Okay.
in the motion.
So to
because-
allow a deferral, if they wanted that.
I mean, if they want to put up a bond, then that's fine. But I want to make sure that they have the option to choose to defer those costs
until later development. And I think the way we would typically word that is it would defer through a developer's agreement those improvements until such time as they're necessary for future development to the east.
Okay.
Say our current conditions for each of those roads would be build a full standard, financial guarantee, or variance. So we could add in the condition as well, when we write the condition and the approval letter, we could say a fourth one or a developer agreement or something like that.
You want to add that to your motion?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have a motion. And a second. Okay, so this motion is to grant a variance for the developer to pave only or be required to pave only their incremental half of 48th and 49th Street at the widths established directly west of Bowie, with the option to defer until a time that it would be required, East
on
of.
adjacent development.
Based on adjacent development. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, hands for opposed, please. Okay, so 5-1. Okay, now, a motion for the replat?
I would say a motion to approve the replat, subject to the variances
That have been granted.
that have been granted and/or denied.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the replat based on the variances that have been granted or denied. And a second? And a second. All in favor of approving this replat, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Made such progress. Sit down.
We'll allow public comment. We're going to open public comment.
Sorry, Erica Carter, CFE. We need an answer on utility main extensions. We have yet to be able to have an answer on, it's a part of the subdivision ordinance.
I was going to say, the staff's indicated that we don't have the ability to deny it.
But it's part of the subdivision ordinance. Can you not? As a condition, y'all can
Okay.
waive it.
So we're going to withdraw the approval of the replat.
So close.
I think so you could make a motion to exclude the condition that references requirement of water and sewer. Now, it will be a later determination whether the water utility or sewer utility ordinances require that independently of the subdivision ordinance. But as far as your authority, yes, you could make a motion to eliminate those requirements per this platting process.
And in my opinion, this goes back to the same thing with the roads. I don't necessarily want to defer this cost to the guys that are building east.
Well, and if you're going to reconsider this item, you've already voted, so you need to make a motion to reconsider this item if that's moving forward.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to reconsider? Or do you want to make a motion to approve? Anyone?
Already approved.
Yeah, I think Hillary's saying you actually took the vote to approve the plat. So if you could reconsider to address Ms. Carter's suggestion to remove those conditions.
Okay. If we want to talk about utilities, someone's going to have to make a motion to reconsider.
That's a determination to you. She did jump up and say, wait a minute, as you were voting. So as the chair, you could make a determination that, no, the vote didn't happen. I think that'd be fair enough.
Yes, Ms. Carter.
That's my bad. I do want to make the point that with replatting how they are, our properties don't need those utilities. Right. So you're putting the financial burden on them, and they're not even going to use those utilities. Now, further on, they can't turn their properties around and use the utilities that are already there. Right. So you're putting the financial burden on these guys that are going to have no use of them.
Okay.
These 6 properties.
I understand.
So with that being said,
Do we need a motion to
we
reconsider?
don't need to reconsider that.
No. So we have a motion to approve the replat. All in favor, say aye.
So wait,
Well,
do we need?
If you approve it right now as is, it
Yes.
includes the conditions that require the water and sewer extensions.
Yes, sir.
And so now would be the time, if anyone is interested in making a motion to remove those 2 conditions, you would want to do that now before you actually do a final vote on the overall plat.
So I make the motion to approve the replat and not require water and sewer extensions.
Hold on.
Guys, there was a vote that approved the replat with the conditions. So if we're gonna go back on that based on new information, then we need a motion to reconsider, get that passed, and then do a new vote.
I move to reconsider
Okay.
our vote to approve the replat.
But I'm of the thought that they're the ones that moved the lots, the original orientation of the lots. And so we've made some concessions for them, but they've got to do a little something to make the rest of the
I
rest
would
of the area.
suggest that perhaps you do vote to reconsider, just to give a vote
Clarity.
on the water sewer, even if
Okay.
that vote is to.
We're going to withdraw
Not
the
grant.
motion to approve the replat. We have a motion to reconsider. Do we have a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye, okay. Going to make a motion?
Okay, move to approve the replat, subject to the variances approved or denied with the removal of the condition for extensions of utilities to the east.
I second that.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the replat based on the approval and denials of the variances and a removal of the requirement to extend the utilities 150 feet or the depth of the lot. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, opposed? Aye. So we have 4-2, and we've approved the replat. All right. Next item. Plan development, major site plan amendment. Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. Amendment to PDO 6-05, Sonrisas Trails. Public hearing and consideration of request for approval of a major site plan amendment on a property zoned plan development, PDO 6-05 zoning district, to allow for a new ropes challenge course and accessory structures associated with an existing daycare and therapeutic horse riding facility being 9.474 acres located at 5185 and 5191 South Bryant Boulevard.
I guess we'll move forward. We have 5 still. I think
Okay.
Vice Chair Spano will be back momentarily.
No
but
problem.
We can move forward, I think.
Yes.
Okay. So this is an amendment to a plan development zoning 0605 for Sonrisas Trails. It's on 9.474 acres, 5185 and 5191 South Bryant Boulevard. And it's for a plan development, a major site plan. So at this time, they're not changing the zoning. They're not doing any text amendments. The Section 210 of the zoning ordinance says that if you're making a major expansion to an existing site, you have to go to the Planning Commission, but not as far as council. So this requires your review today because it is considered a major expansion. It's on District 1, Tommy Hebert in the Glenmore neighborhood. The future land use is neighborhood and commercial. So the front half, you have Mosaic and Sonrisas. Mosaic has the daycare and offices to the south, and then Sonrisas utilizes this area up here. They had built a tall ropes and a short ropes course, which is just a series of equestrian-related facilities for kids and adults that are disabled, providing that additional service on the property. Was about 3 months ago, we determined that building permits were needed for those things as well as this site plan. And so we had worked with Sonrisas and Mr. Vincent at West Texas Boys Ranch, who's helping them on this project in order to get these tall ropes, the major site plan expansion of the PD to cover that back area with the tall ropes, as well as obtaining the approval for the building permits. And they have submitted building permits, and they're moving forward, subject to approval of this today. This is looking north, this is south. I'll go through these quickly. Most of you are familiar with the Mosaic and the Sonrisas properties. There's an existing riding arena here as well to the north. So they had added some awnings, which do require permits, but this was approved back in 2017. They did an expansion already. Let me go to the concept plan. It's probably easier. This is the tall ropes course today that you're seeing. And this is some of the smaller, called the short ropes course. Basically, the tall ropes course is about 50 feet tall. It's got 3 platforms and a zip line the short ropes course are on the ground. So it's a series of obstacles and games for kids in these families. So this is a better view. So here's the concept plan. So 2006, Sunrisas and Mosaic got approved on this property. In 2017, they did one expansion here for a therapeutic riding area on the property. And so now today, in 2019, they're adding this tall ropes area as well as a short ropes area here. So that's what we're approving today, is this expanded area in the back. Rationale for approval, unlike a zone change, because it's not actually changing the zoning, it's just a site plan, there's 11 criteria. I'll go through these very quickly. Safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement. We don't believe there's any safety issues once this is permitted. There's an existing parking area at the front already. No fire hazards, again, existing parking area at the front, and they are going through permitting. Protection from flooding, it is within the 2% annual flood zone, but we don't enforce that. It's not as rigorous as if it's a floodway or a 1% floodplain, so we don't anticipate any issues there. And again, that'll be reviewed through permitting. They'll operate during regular business hours. There's no light fixtures proposed in their rear. There are some homes to the west and to the southwest that's zoned ranch and estate. So we did look at noise and glare, but there shouldn't be any. No new signs or traffic control. That would be a concern there. Off-street parking and loading. 79 parking spaces are required. Our new parking section in the zoning ordinance includes the outdoor area where the ropes course is. So unfortunately, we had to measure a line around that ropes course, and they were short 3 parking spaces. The good news is they came in on Friday and they provided us with a revision and an alternative parking plan request. And we just need to draft that letter, but we had our support from a planning director on that, just given that all of the vehicles will utilize the existing property, and they're the same people that would come from Mosaic would then use the ropes course, so it's not generating any more traffic. So we could waive that last condition when we get to it. Ingress and egress, it's got access off of South Bryant. That's not going to change. We are requesting to plant 40-foot tall trees along the property lines to the south and west, just around the tall ropes course, because there is housing behind there. Applicant has agreed to that. No site coverage impacts, views and sight lines. Just given the fact that it's 50 feet high was the reason we looked at doing the trees in the back, but they will comply with all of the setbacks. And no other health or safety issues. So 50 notices were mailed out. 1 was received in response, and none in opposition. So staff is recommending approval of a major amendment to a site plan on a property zoned plan development PDO 605 zoning district to allow for a new ropes challenge course and accessory structures associated with an existing daycare and therapeutic horse riding facility, subject to 5 conditions of approval. So one is development on the subject property shall generally conform to the PDO 605 zoning district, and it will. 2, the overall site use shall be in accordance with the approved major site plan as amended. Major changes to the uses of this property shall be approved through an amendment to this plan development district, and major site plans may approve by the Planning Commission. So again, if they're doing a major zone change or a text amendment, goes to council, another major site plan like this, back to Planning Commission, and minor site plans and adjustments we can approve administratively. 3, the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the Permits and Inspection Division. They are going through that process now. And 4, the applicant shall submit a revised major site plan delineating the new rear porch attached to the office building and include the additional 3 parking spaces, or obtain approval of an alternative parking plan from the planning director to allow the existing on-site parking. And they have obtained that approval already. So this condition could leave it as is, but it has been fulfilled. And 5, a landscape plan shall be submitted to the planning director delineating a minimum of 10 trees at least 40 feet tall at full maturity along the portion of the rear property lines immediately west and south of the tall ropes course to provide screening from adjacent residential zoning and uses. And this is just a note, about 150, so that zip line area, we caught this during our review. The tall ropes course, there's about a 300-foot zip line that goes to the north. Half of that, so about 150 feet, was still zoned ranch and estate. So they will be coming back next month, actually, to expand the PD zoning, just to include that area to the north. I can show that to you again on the plan, but it's just basically right north of the tall ropes course. So that's just a note to advise that they will have to come back for that if they want to keep that north half of that zip line area. They've submitted their application, so you'll see that next month. This concludes staff's presentation. Any comments or questions?
Could you please show the zoning map in the area that you're talking about?
So unfortunately, when they did this in 2006, Mosaic actually owns all of this land up here as well. And so this little area in here, which is, and the applicants here, it's basically like a zip line area. So here you have the 3 tall ropes platforms. From here to here, it's within the PD boundary. So it's basically from here to here. And so the new PD boundary would do something like this and just include that rectangle.
And what you're saying is that they can't build this until they get the rezoning to add that area to the planned development?
Yes, sir. They can actually obtain all of the permits, including the tall ropes. They just can't get the zip line part of it. So they could get, so for example, these awnings still needed to be permitted. They were going through that. A few storage containers here, they're going through that. The tall ropes could also be approved. The short ropes don't need permits at all. So it's really just the zip line part. They'd probably just now wait. I would just wait a month if I was them on this part of it. Or they could remove that as part of their building permit and get everything else approved now and just wait until we see you all in December.
Okay. Anyone have questions for Mr. Fisher?
Yeah. So why, and believe me, I promise I'm not being sarcastic. I know that's a shock. This is really, I just want to know. Why do they have to come back in December? Why didn't we put this on this case? If we already knew it was stretching into R&E?
We had caught it during our site plan review of this, and the notifications had already gone out with this concept plan.
Okay, so it couldn't have made it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to
timing
know.
standpoint.
No, it's okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to open up the floor if there's anyone from the applicant representative that could come forward, and please state your name.
Jeremy Vincent with West Texas Boys Ranch and some Reese's. We just want to appreciate your time today and hope that you'll take the staff's recommendation in improving this amendment to the site plan.
Thank you, sir. Anyone have questions? Appreciate it. All right. We're going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this case, please come forward. Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone wish to make a motion or have questions?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Right-of-way abandonments. Alley right-of-way abandonment. Republic Way Services, Texas.
Did we do a conditional use yet?
The conditional use
Skipped it.
withdrew their case, but I believe Joe has to recuse himself, so let's wait till read the caption until he steps out.
Oh, I didn't know I had to wait. I knew that he had to recuse himself, but I thought I could read the case and then recuse him. Okay, Mr. Spano's going to step out and recuse himself. Thank you, sir. This is a request to approve the abandonment and vacation of the 20-foot by 350-foot alley in Block 49 Fairview Addition between North Cecil Street, North Archer Street, East Houston Hart Expressway, and Vec Street. Ms. Bailey.
Sherry Bailey, principal planner again. As you indicated, this is an alleyway abandonment. It is 20 feet by 350 feet or 7,000 square feet. The present zoning is heavy manufacturing. The future land use is industrial. It is in District 3, Mr. Thomas's district, and it is the Pauline neighborhood. It's presently being used as a storage area mainly for Republic, but there is also property owners on both on the north and the south on the east side of the alley. This is a picture. As you can see, the alley has never been improved. It actually has only been used as access from the east side. There was originally a AEP electric pole in the back, and so they would have access to that, but they haven't been using that recently, and it is not improved and is fenced off on the west side. Again, this shows Mr. Hales and Mr. Green's property and the Republic property. All three property owners have been notified with a notice of this meeting and what is intended for the alley. The rationale for this is there's traffic patterns. There's no evidence that the alley has really been used as an alley ever since it was platted back in 1906. There are utilities there. There's a sewer line that is there, and there's electric on the east side. Under community impact, this is a heavy manufacturing industrial use area where the waste facility has had storage for quite a while. There is no intent and has not been in the past for any kind of increased activity. And the public benefit is the continued use of a necessary industrial storage for an existing industry. Staff is recommending approval of the alley right-of-way abandonment for the 20 by 350 feet with 3 conditions of approval. Those are per the Code of Ordinances, Section A 9.00A, pavement per the assessment formula that the city maintains for abandonment of alley right-of-way. Second one is verification of the recordation of a quitclaim deeds from the city saying that the city no longer has any interest in the property, and a recording of a subdivision replat that absorbs the subject property either into all 3 property owners' property, if all 3 property owners want their section of the abandoned alley, or if it ends up with just one property owner, there would be a replat absorbing that alley right of way. Are there any questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you. We're going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this case, please come forward. State your name.
Property just to the north of the alley. My main concern is I once wanted to close this alley because I assumed they had got the proper channels. I went to the city and found out it was done illegally. I would like to use the alley to go through. We just recently purchased a business and we're going to be building a building with all the permits and everything going on. We'd like to put a building up and we're going to use that alley as access to round the block and come up on the access road. Presently, if I go out my property and I'm on Archer Street trying to get on the block carrying trailers, it's tough making that turn. There's a yield sign like 10 feet after that turn, and I take up the whole curve there trying to get on, so we're actually having to go all the way around the block and out to the access road in order to get on the access road and yield for the ramp exiting. If it's closed down, I'm not sure how it works or who gets property. If me or Mr. Green do not want it, is Republic responsible for maintaining that all the way out? Because I mean, my issue we have too right now is people dump a lot right there. They think it's an empty lot. They don't know it's an alley.
Okay.
They dump, and I get messages from the city that I have to go clean it up.
Right. I understand.
Mr. Hale, if you did not want your property and Republic wanted the entire alley, it would be replatted and become part of their property. So in all actuality, they would probably fence it off to keep access from going down that alley. There is a sewer in the alley, and we are requiring that that easement be maintained for the sewer. But yes, it would become part of their property.
So they would maintain it?
Yes. Now, if you wanted your half of the property that abuts the alley and Mr. Green wanted his, then each of you would be required to replat that and absorb it, and it would become part of your property.
With the purchase going to the city?
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so come back, I'm sorry, just to clarify. So there's an imaginary line that runs down the middle of that alley. And the properties to the north own half of the alley, the properties to the south own the other half.
Correct.
So the only half that we're talking about is from the midpoint of the alley to you.
Correct.
And you would have the right to purchase that, but if you purchase it, you also have to maintain it.
Correct.
So are you in support of closing the alley or not? If you didn't have the alley, I'm assuming that you could put a curb cut on, is it Archer Street you said?
Yes, sir.
That could allow you to circle through your property just like you would if it was the alley and come up on the frontage road.
I was just making sure who was going to maintain it if the purchasing went certain ways.
The owner of the property would be responsible for maintaining it.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, anyone else have public comment? Want to come up and speak? I'm going to close it. Anyone up here wish to make a motion or have questions? We have a motion and a second to approve as proposed by the staff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0 in favor. Okay. If someone could grab Mr. Spano while I read the next case here. This is the alley right-of-way abandonment, City of San Angelo, a request to approve the abandonment of approximately 8,800 square feet of the East Avenue D public right-of-way, generally located on East Avenue D between West Avenue C and West Washington Drive, within Block 15 of the Mill Spa Edition. Ms. Pascal.
Hi. This proposal is near the Santa Fe Depot. It is East Avenue D, but is currently in an open right-of-way right now. It is approximately 0.2 acres. It's within the 1500 block of Mill Spa. It's in District 3 Thomas, and it's in the Fort Concho neighborhood. This is the Santa Fe Depot here. With Chadburn, as you can see, East Avenue D, it just kind of stops at Chadburn. It's currently this is the subject property, and it's just an open parking lot. Here's a zoomed in so that we do know kind of what piece of property we're talking about. As you can see, there's a train here, a stationary display, and it's currently just a parking lot. The future land use on the property is downtown, and the zoning is light manufacturing. Here's a couple of photos of the subject property. It's currently just a parking lot, and then the Santa Fe Depot is to the north. There's a couple of commercial buildings to the south of the subject property. I did send out 3 notifications. I received I received 0 in favor and 0 in opposition on this request. Staff, we did circulate information regarding if this would be a viable thing to do, because if there's utilities or anything in this right-of-way, and there is no utilities existing in this right-of-way. And the staff believes this proportion currently provides no public benefit, and in closing it would provide more area for the historic Santa Fe Depot to expand as they desire. City staff, we are recommend approval, subject to one condition, the condition the property be replatted and absorbed into the Santa Fe Depot property. Any questions?
Yes, could you go back to the map?
This one?
Yeah, that'll work. So we're talking about all of the area in red
Correct.
that you guys, and the city is purchasing this land that is currently right-of-way?
It is, it is the city property, and they're gonna open it for public use.
And Cindy Priest is here with our real estate division that could probably speak to all the pieces of this.
Okay, great.
Cindy Priest, Real Estate Department, City of San Angelo. The city is requesting the abandonment of this portion of the public alleyway. We will retain ownership of that, and it will be used as a public purpose. It's going to be in conjunction with the static display of Historic Santa Fe Depot, Inc. We want to work with them so that they can improve their static display.
Okay. When you say static display, what do you mean?
I mean the existing train pieces that are on a static display now, they don't move.
Oh, okay. They're actually on part of this property. Or are they?
A small portion of them.
Very small portion. I see that now.
Very small portion. They are
Okay.
hoping to make some improvements to that and actually do a public dedication.
Okay.
So again, this is just working with the Historic Orient Santa Fe Depot to improve their structure, the lease they have from the city.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
And the railroad is supportive of this abandonment.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this case, please come forward. I'm going to close public comment. We have a motion and a second to approve as proposed by the staff. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0 in favor. Director's report.
Don't have anything to add today.
Okay. The next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is tentatively scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. on Monday, December 16th, 2019, in council chambers of the McNeese Convention Center at 501 Rio Concho Drive. I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passed. It is 11:16.